Hi everyone! Welcome back to a new video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the video!
This is Excalibur, a master of gun and blade. With a balance of mobility and defensive capability, Excalibur is the perfect gateway into the incredible power of the Warframes. Excalibur has uniquely balanced powers for offensive and defensive engagement. Slash-dash forces Excalibur forward, ricocheting from one enemy to the next, violently damaging them in his wake, or use its mobile advantage for better positioning. Radial Blind stuns all enemies in your vicinity, leaving them open for deadly attacks and finishers. Even the best get surrounded sometimes. Radial Javelin launches deadly blades in all directions, skewering anyone in range, impaling them to the walls. Exalted Blade is a devastating weapon. Every swing of your blade delivers a deadly wave of energy hitting anyone in its path, its damage enhanced by your melee weapon. While Exalted Blade is active, you'll be able to stun your enemies with every melee slide attack, and if that doesn't finish the job, Slash-dash is more dangerous, doing extra damage, but be cautious of your energy, as it depletes while in use. Slash-dash, Radial Javelin, and Exalted Blade are benefited by increased strength mods, while Slash-dash, Radial Javelin, and Radial Blind all reach farther with range mods. Wield your Exalted Blade longer with efficiency mods. No matter your style, Tenno, Excalibur is a formidable choice.
This is Trinity, the healer, the equalizer. Specializing in support, she can provide much-needed reinforcements in battle. Trinity's abilities focus on restoration and preservation rather than destruction. Well of Life highlights and transfers health from its targets to Trinity or any ally who attacks it, providing restoration in the heat of battle. Energy Vampire radiates energy to nearby players every few seconds while causing damage to its target. Link reduces incoming damage away from Trinity and transfers it to nearby enemies at full strength. Did you call for backup, Tenno? Blessing immediately restores the health and shields of all teammates regardless of their position, with the addition of temporary invulnerability. Trinity is an incredible support frame, and equipping mods will help to increase her ability to assist her allies in the heat of battle. A duration mod will benefit all of Trinity's abilities, and combined with strength mods, Well of Life and Energy Vampire will see marked increases in their health and energy extraction. Adding a range mod to the mix will also increase the area of effectiveness of her healing abilities. Trinity is a must for any high-stakes mission. She'll save your life. This is Volt, a versatile warrior. A master in tactics, he can be a shocking agent of death. Volt's abilities harness the raw and unpredictable power of electricity. Shock emits a bolt of intense chain lightning, stunning and potentially killing its target and nearby enemies. Speed energizes Volt and his nearby teammates, providing increased speed and dexterity for a limited time. Electric Shield deploys a wall of energy, providing cover in any situation. It also adds limited electrical damage to most outgoing projectiles that pass through the shield. A storm is coming, Tenno. Overload releases an intense energy field, destroying nearby electronics while channeling severe electrical damage to all enemies caught within its radius. Volt, by nature, is incredibly effective against the Corpus, but the use of mods will increase his usefulness against any faction. Adding a strength mod will increase the damage output of Shock and the compounding electrical effects of Overload. Equipping range and duration mods will help the rest of Volt's powers become tactical assets on the battlefield. Volt's arsenal is powerful and electrifying. Handle with care, Tenno. This is Rhino, an immovable force and highly resilient. Specializing in crowd control, he sacrifices speed for strength. Rhino is well equipped to both deal and absorb damage. Rhino Charge propels Rhino forward in a straight line, knocking down or eliminating enemies in his path. Iron Skin protects against incoming damage while making Rhino immune to stun, stagger, and knockdown effects. Rhino Roar invigorates your allies, increasing the damage done by all teammates within its radius. When Rhino Stomp is activated, he slams the ground with an incredible force, causing damage to enemies within its range, while keeping them locked in stasis, in prime position to be taken out. Rhino's abilities scale very well, allowing for an increased impact on the battlefield. Upgrading Rhino's abilities with fusion cores will greatly increase their effectiveness against higher-level enemies. All of Rhino's abilities can be improved by equipping duration, cost reduction, and maximum energy mods to your warframe. Combined with armor, shield, and health mods, he becomes an almost unstoppable tank. Rhino can survive alone, or become the cornerstone of any squad, Tenno. The choice is yours. This is Mag, a force to be reckoned with. She is a master of all things magnetic, and can tip the scales of battle in almost any situation. Mag operates in extremes, and her polarizing nature is reflected in her abilities. Pull allows Mag to bring her enemies closer, and in range to be taken out. With Shield Polarize, Mag can deplete the shields of enemies within range, or restore an ally's, quickly turning the battle in her favor. When up against a greater foe, Bullet Attractor will magnetize the target, causing any bullet that passes nearby to immediately strike. If your target dies while still magnetized, the attractor becomes volatile and causes damage to anything in range of it. When the battlefield gets crowded, Tenno, Crush will magnetize the bones of your enemy, causing them to collapse upon themselves in a fantastic display of force. Employing mods will help to increase Mag's already great influence on the battlefield. Utilizing range-extending mods will allow you to pull an enemy within melee range from a much greater distance. Utilizing extended duration and range mods will increase the length of time and distance from which bullets will be attracted to your enemies. Focusing the power of your warframe, as well as utilizing range-extending mods, will allow you to decimate enemies from further than ever before. Mag is a team player, Tenno, and a worthy addition to any squad. This is Ember, destructive and deadly. Sacrificing safety for reckless abandon, she erupts into battle. Ember's abilities offset her fragility with pure offensive capability. Fireball launches a fiery projectile towards your target, dealing high damage upon impact and moderate damage to any nearby who stumble onto the lingering flames. Accelerant blasts outwards from Ember, stunning nearby enemies while also making them more susceptible to fire damage. Fire Blast slams down a persistent ring of fire, dealing high initial damage to enemies within its radius when cast, and over time. Some just want to watch the world burn, Tenno. World on Fire follows Ember, causing fiery explosions while dealing high damage over time to a limited number of targets. Ember, by nature, is incredibly effective with flames, but the use of mods will help her become even more deadly. Adding strength mods will increase the damage output by all her abilities. Adding duration mods will benefit Accelerant and Fire Blast. Coupled with a range mod, World on Fire becomes even more effective. Ember's presence on the battlefield is devastating. Mind the heat, Nano. This is Ash. Lethal and elusive. Quickly moving into and out of combat, he can be an unseen and deadly force. Ash is a reflection of ancient history, and his abilities an homage to the past. Seeking out targets, Shuriken launches a spinning blade of death. Smokescreen allows Ash to instantly vanish, while stunning and blinding enemies with a cloud of smoke. Teleport brings Ash directly in front of his target, allowing him to engage in melee close combat. Keep moving, Tenno. Blade Storm teleports Ash between a number of nearby enemies, delivering lethal strikes along the way. Utilizing mods to complement Ash's abilities will help him be neither seen nor heard on the battlefield. Equipping a strength mod will most benefit Shuriken and Bladestorm. Paired with an increased range mod, all of Ash's abilities will become more effective. Adding increased speed, stamina, and radar mods will give Ash a distinct advantage over his enemies. Ash can remain unseen, but his effects on the battlefield are felt by all. Keep an eye out.
This is Loki, the trickster, the deceiver. He sacrifices durability in favor of speed. Mastering Loki is not about outgunning your opponents, it's about outsmarting them. Well equipped for confusing and distracting his enemies, Loki becomes an incredible asset to his team. Decoy allows Loki to draw enemy fire away from himself and his teammates, or to seek out a hidden threat. If there is trouble ahead, invisibility allows Loki to camouflage himself to remain undetected from sensors and cause extra damage on sneak melee attacks. To aid in your enemy's confusion or escape a tough situation, Loki can utilize Switch Teleport to trade places with his target, be it your enemy, a decoy, or even a teammate. When the battle intensifies, Tenno, Loki can use Radial Disarm to disrupt his enemy's weapons, forcing them to resort to melee combat. Loki can wreak havoc within the solar system if used correctly, and can utilize mods to enhance his abilities. Equipping range-extending mods will allow you to distract enemies from further away, or reach greater distances when a quick escape is required. Utilizing fusion cores to upgrade invisibility and radial disarm will help keep you hidden longer, and cause an even wider radius of enemy malfunction. Whether you prefer to go into battle alone or with a team, Tenno, Loki will adapt to any challenge.
This is Nyx, manipulator of minds. She is an invasive force, sacrificing armor for increased power. With a penchant for confusion, Nyx can inflict mayhem into the psyche of all who oppose her. Mind control confuses its target, forcing it to turn on its own and fight for the Tenno cause. Psychic bolts are a cluster of telekinetically guided energy fragments that seek out and damage their target. Chaos is exactly as it sounds, Tenno. Causing mass hysteria, affected enemies will attack anyone within range. Absorb creates a protective sphere around Nyx, channeling all incoming damage into an explosive and deadly radial discharge. Nyx's psychic influence can be greatly increased with the utilization of mods. Equipping increased duration and range mods will benefit Mind Control, Chaos, and Absorb. Adding a Strength mod will increase the damage caused by psychic bolts. Coupled with an Efficiency mod, Nyx can slice through her enemy's defenses. On her own, or in a group, Nyx can turn the tide of battle in her favor. This is Frost, colder and deadlier than space itself. Heavily armored and a master of sub-zero temperatures, the battlefield is his playground. Frost's abilities are built for both offensive and defensive roles. Freeze emits a directed energy blast that stops the target in its tracks, covering it in ice. Ice Wave sends a torrent of razor-sharp ice crystals towards enemies, dealing massive damage to and slowing its target. Snow Globe is the perfect defensive element. Anything caught inside will be surrounded by an impenetrable sphere of protection, deflecting all incoming projectiles. Tread lightly, Tenno. Avalanche summons a flurry of ice and snow that instantly freezes and shatters all enemies caught in its radius. Frost can be specialized into either an offensive or defensive tank. Upgrading Ice Wave and Avalanche, as well as installing Strength and Range mods, will allow Frost to provide an even greater offense. Snow Globe and Freeze, combined with Duration, Range, and Strength mods, will strengthen his defensive capabilities. Frost can protect or punish. The decision is yours.
This is Saryn, elusive and deadly. Incredibly infectious and toxic, it is nearly impossible to contain her destructive nature. Saryn possesses a horrifying mix of abilities that, when mastered, control the battlefield. Spores grows venomous blobs on its target, dealing damage over time. When shot, blobs explode and spread to nearby enemies. Molt allows Saryn to leave behind a shell of her former self. Molt draws fire away, deceives her enemies, explodes on deactivation, and damages nearby enemies with toxic effects. Keep your enemies at arm's length, Tenno. Toxic Lash adds incredibly poisonous traits to your melee attacks, transmitting disease and plague with each hit on the enemy, causing bonus damage. Miasma eats away at her enemies, disintegrating them over time with its corrosive effects. If targets are under the influence of toxins or viruses, damage is increased. Combine with a Molt clone to even further amplify Miasma's power. Saryn can be made even more deadly by utilizing various mods to enhance her abilities. Equipping Strength and Duration mods will drastically enhance the deadliness of all Saryn's abilities, while a Range mod will benefit Spores, Molt, and Miasma's damage areas. Saryn is a deadly force on the battlefield. Get down with the sickness, Tenno.
This is Banshee, stealthy and ranged. Using the deceiving power of sound, she can infiltrate nearly any situation. While not built to take damage, Banshee deals it out in spades. Sonic Boom can incapacitate or kill enemies in front of her with an armor-piercing shockwave that pushes them away. Reminiscent of ancient Earth technology, sonar reveals enemies to Banshee's entire team, revealing their weak spots and location. Silence allows Banshee to limit her enemies' perception and response times, causing attacks to go unnoticed by those affected. Cover your ears, Tenno. When Soundquake is used, Banshee releases ultrasonic waves to take out any enemies who dare enter its range. Banshee can be upgraded to enhance her effectiveness at longer range, or limited close combat situations. All of Banshee's core abilities will benefit from utilizing increased range mods. Using an increased strength mod will positively affect Sonic Boom and Soundquake's destructive power. Installing increased duration mods will most benefit Sonar and Silence, allowing Banshee to take more time formulating her attack plan. No one puts Banshee in a corner, Tenno. The element of surprise is in her favor. This is Vauban, focused and methodical. Vauban creates a deadly environment for his enemies. Well-versed in the art of trapping, he is a master of the unexpected. Tesla allows Vauban to place an electrically charged grenade, shocking all enemies within range. Need a lift, Tenno? Bounce can be applied on any surface and provides an unexpected launch pad for anyone who triggers it, both friend and foe. Bastille will levitate your enemies, holding them in place, making them a perfect shooting target for your squad. When a vortex is triggered, enemies within range will succumb to its deadly force, crushing their atoms into a singularity and blinking them out of existence. Vauban's traps can be upgraded for greater effect via the use of mods and fusion cores. Extended duration, efficiency, and range mods will allow a greater trigger range and Tesla shock strength. An increased duration mod, coupled with fusion core upgrades, will hold higher strength enemies in place longer, allowing for increased damage to your target. Upgrading Vortex with fusion cores will increase its range and crushing power, affecting more types of enemies than before. Vauban willingly sacrifices his own safety in the name of mayhem. Use him wisely, Tenno.
This is Nova. Wildly unpredictable. Her very existence is a result of Tenno High Council research. Nova's complexity is embodied in her abilities, which bend the laws of physics. Null Star creates orbiting antimatter particles around Nova that seek out and collide into nearby enemy targets, with deadly results. Antimatter Drop releases a highly unstable and dangerous particle of antimatter that collects all incoming damage, detonating upon impact with its target, afflicting anything within range. Wormhole allows Nova to create a doorway through space, Tenno. Anyone crossing into the event horizon will immediately be teleported to the target location, friend or foe. Molecular Prime bathes all enemies within radius with antimatter. Eliminating a primed enemy will cause matter to collide, resulting in a fantastic and explosive display of destruction. Nova's grasp of exotic matter can be greatly increased via the use of mods. Equipping range and duration mods will positively affect most of her abilities, while adding a strength mod will increase the damage done by Drop, Molecular Prime, and Null Star. Nova's presence on the battlefield is complex and deadly. Handle with care, Tenno. This is Nekros, manipulator of souls. The Tenno incarnation of Shaman, he is a practitioner of death. Nekros' abilities meddle in the unknown, instilling terror on the battlefield. Soul Punch forces the target's soul out of its body, turning it into a deadly projectile, damaging all in its path. Terrify casts fear into nearby enemies, causing them to flee in terror and become susceptible to increased damage. Desecrate gives a chance that nearby corpses of fallen enemies will drop additional loot, providing extra assistance in the heat of battle. Bring out your dead, Tenno. Shadows of the Dead resurrects shadow versions of your fallen enemies to fight alongside you for a limited time. Nekros can cast a darker shadow over the battlefield with the usage of mods. Strength mods will positively affect most of Nekros' abilities. Adding duration mods will positively affect Terrify and Shadows of the Dead, while adding a range mod will further increase the effectiveness of Soul Punch and Desecrate. Nekros possesses the battlefield, Tenno. Death is his home. This is Valkyr, the Tormented, the Experiment. Forged in the labs of the Zaruka Project, she redirects her anger onto the battlefield. Valkyr's abilities are wild and untethered, unleashing chaos all around her. Whipline sets forth a deadly yet useful hook. If it strikes an enemy, they are hurled towards her with fatal consequences. Otherwise, it can be used for utility and traversal. Warcry intimidates and slows Valkyr's enemies, while simultaneously rallying her allies, increasing armor and melee swing speed. Paralysis emits a burst around Valkyr, depleting half of her available shields, while stunning and damaging nearby enemies based on the amount depleted. Don't keep your rage bottled up, Tenno. Hysteria causes Valkyr to unleash a relentless torrent of melee attacks against all nearby enemies, while giving her temporary invulnerability. However, a fraction of damage taken during this time will be reflected back onto Valkyr if any enemies remain. Valkyr is rage personified, and utilizing her mods will help to increase her deadliness. Equipping a range mod will increase the effectiveness of all of her abilities, while adding strength mods into the mix will benefit Ripline, Warcry, and Paralysis. Finally, a duration mod will also enhance Warcry and Paralysis, giving her more time to destroy her enemies. Valkyr was crafted from Torment, Tenno. Take control of
This is Oberon, the mystic, the willful. Commanding the natural world, he protects his allies and obliterates his foes. Smite bathes its target with radiation while also forming roaming projectiles attracted to nearby enemies, damaging any they contact. Hallowed ground blankets the ground around Oberon, and any enemies that step within it will submit to damage over time. Renewal emits a growing wave of healing energy for your allies, giving slow health regeneration over time once it passes them. Combined with Hallowed Ground, and allies also receive an armor buff. Reckoning lifts nearby enemies up and slams them to the ground. Any foes that witness, but are not affected by Reckoning, will become temporarily blinded. Oberon is an adept and honorable warrior, Tenno.
This is Zephyr, light yet deceivingly lethal. Adept in mobility, she rarely keeps her feet on the ground. Zephyr's abilities set her into flight, causing mayhem in the process. Tailwind creates a blast of energy, propelling Zephyr through the air, damaging anything in her wake. Dive Bomb sets Zephyr into a nosedive towards the ground, creating an explosion on impact that damages and stuns enemies within its radius. Turbulence creates a shield of wind, deflecting incoming projectiles away from Zephyr. You're not in Terminus anymore, Tenno. Tornado forms deadly twisters around nearby enemies, causing damage to all caught within. These funnel clouds can also be modified by elemental damage types to wreak even more havoc. Zephyr's aerial superiority can be further increased with the utilization of mods. Strength and range mods will benefit all of Zephyr's abilities. Further complemented by a duration mod, Tailwind, Turbulence, and Tornado's effects will last longer in battle. Zephyr brings graceful destruction to the battlefield. Look out,
This
Tenno.
is Hydroid, a deadly marauder from the deep. Master of the aquatic, he surprises his enemies at every turn. Tempest Barrage calls down a chargeable torrent of liquid fury, knocking down enemies in the target area. Tidal Surge sets Hydroid forth in an unstoppable wall of water that sweeps up any enemies in his way. Undertow casts Hydroid into a movable water trap that allows him to pull in his enemies with deadly tentacles, causing them to slowly drown while submerged. From 20,000 leagues below, Tentacle Swarm summons a creature from the deep, violently wreaking havoc on his enemies, with a greater range and number of tentacles the longer it is charged. Whether the sea or the stars, Tenno, Hydroid takes a foreboding command of the battlefield.
This is Mirage, a sly conjurer. Master of illusions, she alters her environment through skillful manipulation. Mirage's abilities, based in deception, are feared by her enemies. Hall of Mirrors creates copies of Mirage that mimic her every action, following her around, drawing attention and fire from enemies while also inflicting reduced damage from their weapons. Sleight of Hand causes inanimate objects around Mirage to transform into irresistible traps for her enemies to fall victim to, often with deadly effect. Eclipse gives Mirage one of two enhancements when cast. In darkness, she takes less damage. In light, she deals more damage, all of which vary as illumination levels change. Don't stare directly into the light, Tenno. Prism ejects a laser-emitting crystal that bounces off various surfaces. While it consumes energy per second, Mirage can deactivate the prism, causing it to explode, blinding nearby enemies. Mirage's illusionistic art can be further developed with the use of mods. All of Mirage's abilities benefit from the inclusion of a duration mod, while Eclipse, Hall of Mirrors, and Prism can be further enhanced with strength mods. Finally, adding a range mod will increase the effectiveness of Sleight of Hand's traps and Prism's ability to affect more enemies. Do you believe in magic, Tenno? Mirage's deceiving influence on the battlefield might make you.
Is Limbo, Master of the Rift. Shifting friends, foes, and himself between planes of existence, tactical opportunities present themselves. Banish displaces targets to the plane opposite of Limbo for a limited time, inflicting additional damage if the target is hostile. Stasis halts the movement of enemies and gunfire inside the rift. When stasis ends, movement resumes. Rift Surge applies a charge to nearby enemies within the rift. Upon exiting the rift, they radially banish nearby foes back into the rift plane. Cataclysm forms a shrinking bubble of interdimensional energy, sending any who enter into the rift before collapsing upon itself into a potentially deadly blast. In a land of both shadow and substance, Limbo is both nowhere and everywhere.
This is Mesa, the Vagabond, the Outcast. A deadly vigilante, she unleashes a fury of munitions toward her enemies. Mesa's abilities reflect and deflect incoming projectiles with ruthless abandon. When activated, Ballistic Battery stores damage dealt into a capped buffer. When disabled, the stored damage is channeled into your next shot. Shooting Gallery cycles a damage increase one at a time to players in your squad, while also causing nearby enemies' weapons to potentially jam. Shatter Shield covers Mesa in a protective shield that reduces incoming damage, while also deflecting incoming projectiles toward nearby enemies. It's high noon, Tenno. When toggled, Peacemaker turns Mesa stationary, unleashing a deadly torrent of firepower toward her foes from hidden slinger pistols. Mesa can be outfitted with mods to increase her ability's deadliness. All of Mesa's abilities are benefited by the inclusion of strength mods, while Shooting Gallery and Shatter Shield will become more effective with duration and range mods installed. Do you feel lucky, Tenno? Mesa's got the fastest guns in the stock. This is Chroma, an ancient legend, master of the elements. Adaptable to any combat scenario, he reigns supreme over the battlefield. Chroma's abilities adapt to his energy color, drastically modifying their effects. Spectral Scream exhales deadly elemental breath, foregoing normal weapon use while active. Elemental Ward surrounds nearby allies with a reflective elemental shield. Fire gives additional health and adds a flame aura that deals additional damage. Electricity provides additional shields while storing some incoming damage, discharging upon nearby enemies. Poison adds a stamina boost, while also providing an aura that has a chance to poison nearby enemies. Ice applies additional armor, as well as an ice shield that reflects incoming fire, inflicting some damage to enemies. Vex armor converts any shield damage taken into an armor increase, and any health loss into a limited damage increase, perfect for leading the charge into battle. Free yourself, Tenno. Effigy sheds Chroma's pelt, which hovers in the air, defending against enemies with elemental attacks. While active, Chroma will gain speed, but loses a portion of his armor. All of Chroma's abilities are benefited by increased strength, while Spectral Scream and Elemental Ward become more effective with added range. Duration complements Elemental Ward and Vex armor. When all the land is in ruins, Tenno, only Chroma will remain.
This is Equinox, a deadly duality. Divided into complementary halves, gleaming the split between day and night. Metamorphosis shifts between Equinox's forms, providing limited stat increases that decay over time. In the day form, Equinox receives increased damage and move speed, while in the night, increased shields and armor. Rest and Rage affects a target area. In the night form, enemies are put to sleep, collapsing when damaged for a period of time. In the day form, enemies gain increased movement speed, but become more susceptible to damage. Pacify and Provoke emits a radial aura. In the night form, enemies within range will deal less damage the closer they are to Equinox, with energy drain compounding per enemy within range. In the day form, Equinox grants nearby allies bonus ability strength, with energy draining with each ability cast within the aura. Break on through, Tenno. Mend and Maim affects all enemies that enter its radius. In the night form, lethal damage contributes to a pool of health that will be evenly distributed to allies upon deactivation. In the day form, your foes are initially struck with damage and begin to bleed. When deactivated, a percentage of lethal damage inflicted is released as radial slash damage. All of Equinox's abilities serve a dual purpose, and can be influenced with the installation of mods. Adding strength mods will positively affect all of Equinox's abilities. Including duration will benefit Metamorphosis and Rest and Rage. Coupled with range mods, all abilities except Metamorphosis will be affected. A true Tenno must master the divide between night and day. Do you have what it takes? This is Atlas, the Brawler, the Strong, master of earth and stone. He alters the environment with an incredible force. Atlas's abilities are honed for both close and ranged combat, while also passively immune to knockdown effects as long as he touches the ground. Landslide propels Atlas forward, punching enemies in his path. Recasting within a time window will provide a combo bonus, increasing damage and reducing energy cost with each successful chain. Tectonics creates a rock barrier in front of Atlas that blocks enemies. If deactivated while the barrier is active, it will turn into a deadly boulder that rolls toward your aim point, eventually exploding with radial damage. Petrify slowly turns enemies in Atlas's view to stone. The closer in proximity an enemy gets, the quicker they slow down. Take the weight off your shoulders, Tenno. Rumblers summons 2 rockmen to battle alongside Atlas. While primarily melee attackers, they can also throw rocks at distant targets.
If disabled while rockmen are still active, they will explode, causing damage to enemies nearby. The addition of mods to Atlas's loadout will help him grow into a stronger Titan. All of Atlas's abilities are benefited by range and strength mods. Including duration mods will positively affect all of his abilities except tectonics. Moving mountains is no easy task, Tenno. Atlas. This is Wukong, the enduring, the swift. With the heart of a trickster, he is an unrestrained primal warrior. Wukong's abilities reflect his stealthy and extremely deadly nature. Iron Jab pokes an enemy with his staff, causing its target to keel over while also knocking down enemies within a radius. If Wukong falls in battle while active, Defy restores a percentage of his health and provides him temporary invulnerability. Each subsequent death reduces the restored health while also trimming down his energy total. Cloud Walker engulfs Wukong in a cloud of smoke, stunning nearby enemies and allowing him to move freely on the battlefield, draining energy based on distance traveled. Speak softly and carry a big stick, Tenno. Primal Fury equips Wukong's bow staff, imposing incredibly deadly melee attacks. With each subsequent hit, the staff grows, causing greater damage. Adding mods to Wukong's loadout will royally increase his deadliness. Range mods will positively affect Iron Jab, Cloud Walker, and Primal Fury, while duration will benefit Defy and Cloud Walker. Adding strength and melee mods to the mix will help Iron Jab and Primal Fury become even more deadly. Everybody's got something to hide, Tenno. Except Wukong. This is IVARA, the huntress, the thief. With her quiver of tactical arrows, she prowls unseen and strikes without warning. IVARA's abilities offer countless advantages, both at range and in close quarters. Quiver provides a choice of 4 specialty arrows unlocked by rank. The cloak arrow creates a dome of invisibility at its target, moving or stationary. Protecting from outside attacks, IVARA and her allies become invisible. Dash wire creates a zipline from IVARA's feet to the point of impact, allowing for unique vantage points never before possible. The noise arrow creates a sound-emitting beacon that attracts nearby unalerted enemies to its point of impact. The sleep arrow puts enemies into a deep trance, opening them up for attack or more gainful manipulation. Navigator gives complete control of your last active fired projectile or the next. Speed it up by firing or slow down by aiming. The longer you control a projectile, the more damage it will deal upon impact. Steal from the rich and give to yourself, Tenno. Prowl turns IVARA invisible and forces her into a sneaking walk, allowing her to pickpocket one target at a time, while also providing a headshot damage bonus. Artemis Bow summons IVARA's exalted weapon. It fires a fan of deadly arrows while charging your shot changes their orientation. Using secondary fire will utilize the currently selected quiver arrow, perfect for targeting multiple enemies. Strength and duration mods will benefit Navigator and Prowl, while Artemis Bow is made deadlier with strength and inherited primary weapon mods. Prowl, as well as Quiver's noise, cloak, and sleep arrows are given a wider area of effect with the addition of a range mod. And finally, duration will increase Quiver's cloak and sleep arrows' length of effect. Don't roam around the forest looking for a fight, Tenno. IVARA. This is Nezha, the Protector, the Quick. A deceivingly playful facade conceals his immense power. Nezha's abilities keep his enemies at bay and his allies renewed. Firewalker leaves a trail of flames at his feet as he runs, dealing fire damage to enemies that come in contact, while also increasing his movement speed. Blazing Chakram throws a fire chakram. If it hits an enemy, they will become marked. Enemies who die while marked emit a healing pulse to Nezha's allies within a small radius. Triggering this ability while the chakram is in flight will cause Nezha to teleport to it. Warding Halo creates a protective ring of fire around Nezha that absorbs incoming damage while also hurting enemies who venture too close to the ring. Watch your step, Tenno. Divine Spears impales enemies in a radius around Nezha, pinning them to the spears. When deactivated, they retract, slamming enemies into the ground with incredible force. Nezha's abilities are easily modded to increase their effectiveness. Adding strength and range mods will positively impact all of Nezha's powers, and adding a duration mod benefits all but warding Halo. Feel the heat, Tenno. Nezha is a burning thing, and he makes a fire. This is INAROS, the savior, king of the desert. Shrouded in myth and bound by incredible power, INAROS' abilities draw upon the sands from which he was entombed. Desiccation blasts enemies with a wave of cursed sand, blinding and damaging them, while also stealing their health. Devour marks your target, trapping it in quicksand. Charging the ability will draw them towards INAROS for devouring. Alternatively, INAROS or his allies can activate the target, transferring a percentage of its health and shields. If the target dies by the hands of INAROS, a sand shadow will spawn to assist him. Sandstorm transforms INAROS into a whirling spiral of sand, gathering nearby pickups and throwing enemies away. Enemies previously marked for Devour within its radius will be drained of shields and health. Curse thy enemy, Tenno. Scarab Swarm is a charged ability, converting your health into hardened Scarab armor. Discharge it to inflict a swarm of insects toward your enemies. Any survivors will have their health drained and bestowed upon your allies within radius. While INAROS has no shields, performing finishing kills will restore his health. Likewise, if INAROS is felled in battle, he will return to his sarcophagus. Gazing at an enemy will pull it in closer, draining its health. Enemies damaged within its radius will contribute to his ability to revive. If filled, INAROS may automatically resurrect himself. Adding range and strength mods will benefit all of INAROS' abilities, whereas including a duration mod will benefit all but Sandstorm. Whether denizens of the sky or the earth, Tenno, the fear of Anaia, the pixie, the unseen. With deadly grace, she slices her way through the battlefield. Spellbind explodes outward, causing enemies to fumble their weapons as they are whisked into the air, giving nearby allies temporary immunity to status effects. Tribute extracts and suspends the soul of an enemy in midair. Upon touching the soul, one of 4 stackable ability buffs will be activated. Razor flies in the sky, Tenno. Lantern transforms an enemy into an irresistible floating beacon. Like moths to a flame, Titania's razorflies surround the target, damaging all who come near until eventually exploding, knocking down or killing nearby enemies. Go and fly twice as high. Razor Wing transforms Titania into a small but deadly sprite. She and her razorflies gain an evasion bonus, while inflicting incredible damage to their targets. Titania is a deadly and mischievous addition to any squad. But don't take the adaptive, the Scourge. He mutates like an epidemic sweeping through the battlefield. Virulence ruptures forth a wave of infestation. With each enemy afflicted, your infestation begins to stack and mutate. Saving stacked mutations will multiply its destructive force, while refunding a portion of its casting cost. Larva spawns an infested pod that erupts with tendrils, latching onto nearby enemies and holding them down. Parasitic Link creates a temporary symbiosis with your target. With allies, you both get a boost of strength and deal increased damage, whereas enemies will receive a percentage of damage inflicted upon Nidus. Put a pox upon their house, Tenno. Ravenous sets forth gluttonous maggots that swarm nearby enemies, feasting until they burst with infestation. The maggots benefit from mutation, and each enemy consumed adds to the mutation stack. Nidus is a deadly plague for which there is no cure. You must control the strength. This is Octavia, the melodic, the maestro. She harnesses the power of the Mandrachord into her mortal minuet. Using the Mandrachord, you can create your own songs for Octavia to wield in battle. Divided into 3 parts: percussion, bass, and melody. Octavia's song directly influences her abilities. With a variety of instruments to choose from, each battle will be a unique concert of musical mayhem. Mallet emits a percussive radius that attracts your enemies, causing them to attack the source. Storing any damage taken, it releases back onto your enemies with each beat. Drop the bass, Tenno. Resonator launches a rollerball that entrances your foes into following it blindly, forgetting any aggression, with the radius of attraction increasing with each new follower. It can also pick up Mallet, creating a deadly mobile distraction. Metronome grants one of 4 melodic buffs, dependent on timed actions to the beat of Octavia's song. Jump and receive increased speed. Crouch and become cloaked for a limited time. Fire your gun and gain multi-shot. Use your melee and increase your damage. Pump up the jam with Amp, drawing its power from the level of sound of the environment. It provides a damage buff to Octavia and her allies, while also doubling the damage and range of any nearby mallets. If music be the food of death, play on, Tenno. This is Harrow, the monastic, the ritualist. Dedicated to the void, he harnesses its awesome power. Condemn brings forth a wave of energy that chains enemies in place while bolstering Harrow's shields. Penance sacrifices shields, providing health regeneration based on a percentage of damage dealt by Harrow, while also increasing his fire and reload rates. Thurible provides bursts of energy to Harrow and allies within range every time he gets a kill, amplified more so for headshots. The longer it's active, the higher the energy given. Covenant protects allies within range from all damage and status effects for a short period. Once ended, all protected allies gain additional critical chance relative to the amount of damage absorbed. Harrow is suffragan to the void. Will you believe? This is Gera, the deadly warrior. Manipulator of glass, she fractures the resolve of her enemies. Shattered Lash thrusts forward a deadly glass blade, damaging any in its path. Or hold to sweep the blade around an area in front of you. Splinter Storm surrounds her target with swirling shards of glass, pushing away enemies and damaging them, or protecting her allies with a damage reduction. Spectro Rage creates a ring of mirrors around a target area, causing enemies within it to attack and break them, inflicting damage to themselves. When enough mirrors are destroyed, the ring collapses, damaging all enemies within. Break on through, Tenno. Mass Vitrify expands outwards, coating all enemies it passes, slowing them over time until completely frozen, blocking enemies and weapons fire. Hitting the ring with Shattered Lash will cause it to break and deal damage outwards. The shattered remains of her enemies are all that Gera leaves behind. Tread. This is Cora, and her deadly beast Venari, with bladed precision. She is a mistress of entrapment. Whipclaw strikes fast towards her enemies, cracking the whip with a deadly disorienting hit that damages those in its area. Ensnare surrounds and binds her target in living metal, causing them to stop dead in their tracks. Entangling any other foes who stray too close, her trap can be dispersed with another crack of the whip. Venari summons a ferocious gleaming cavat with 3 cycled abilities. Attack directs the Venari toward an enemy, causing damage over time, more so if they're ensnared. Protect causes the Venari to knock down and disarm a target in range that is causing damage to Cora or the Venari itself. Heal sends the Venari to the ally with the lowest health, providing them with a healing aura. Death is listening, Tenno. Weave her whip into a strangle dome of living chain that ensnares and strangles any enemy unfortunate enough to get too close. Don't get caught on the wrong end of a whip crack of Cora's steel. It may be the last thing you hear. This is Revenant, the Returned, the Condemned. Harnessing the essence of Eidolon and warrior alike, he mystifies and obliterates his foes. Enthrall converts its target into a zealous thrall, causing them to turn on their allies and spread the affliction. When a thrall dies, they disintegrate into a damaging pillar of energy. Mesmer Skin envelops Revenant in sentient energy, redirecting incoming damage and stunning all those who dare attack him, allowing them to be enthralled at no energy cost. Reeve transforms Revenant into a wall of deadly sentient mist, leeching health and shields from any enemies it contacts. Even more for thralls. Bewitch your enemies in the moonlight, Tenno. Dance Macabre focuses the power of the Eidolon, and any incoming damage, into an eruption of energy beams, sweeping a circle of death outward around Revenant. Any thralls that succumb to these beams will leave overshield pickups for Revenant and his allies. Revenant serves last rites for the souls he leaves on fire, without a plea. This is Garuda, the Gore Queen. Cleansed by the blood of her enemies, she draws strength from vulnerability. Dread Mirror lunges Garuda toward her enemy, ripping out their life force, converting it into a shield that captures incoming damage. When released, she launches a bloody projectile containing all absorbed damage that explodes on contact. Blood Altar impales an enemy on an altar of talons, which siphons health for Garuda and her allies within its radius. Bloodletting sacrifices a portion of Garuda's health to generate additional energy. Rain Red on the battlefield, Tenno. Seeking Talons charges up to release a torrent of bone blades towards visible enemies, staggering them in pain while also making them prone to bleeding. Additionally, in the absence of an equipped melee weapon, Garuda's talons can be used to slice her way through her enemies. When you understand the nature of Garuda, you'll know what she's capable of. This is Baruch, the reluctant warrior. Following the path that winds between peace and hate, he maintains restraint before unleashing the storm within. Elude dodges incoming gunfire and melee attacks while Baruch is not on offense, wearing down his restraint with each attack dodged. Lull emits a calming wave that slows enemies until they fall into a slumber. Enemies woken by damage will be confused and disoriented, forgetting anything that happened before the lull. Desolate Hands surrounds Baruch with protective daggers that seek out enemy weapons, disarming them. Each successful disarm erodes his restraint. In the absence of enemies, the daggers will jump to nearby allies, granting them the ability to disarm an enemy. If Elude is active, the seeking range is doubled. Try not to lose your head, Tenno. Serene Storm unleashes Baruch's command of the Desert Wind, delivering powerful melee attacks that disarm and ragdoll his enemies, with combos offering a variety of area-based push and pull effects. Each moment commanding the storm restores his restraint. War is the enemy that lies deep within Baruch. Drawing from her shields like a battery, her defensive and offensive utility is unparalleled. This is Hildryn, the Domina of armament. Balefire launches devastating, chargeable bolts of fire. The longer the charge, the more deadly the result. But as with all of her abilities, at the sacrifice of her shields. Shield Pillage emits a thieving wave of energy that strips shields and armor from nearby enemies. Upon its return, Hildryn is granted shields based on the amount stolen. Toggle this ability to instantly return any collected shields in the heat of battle. Haven redirects Hildryn's shields onto her allies, offering additional protection that also decreases shield recharge time. Any enemies who veer too close will suffer damage, more so if overshields are present. It's fight and flight, Tenno. Aegis Storm activates Hildryn's thrusters, allowing her to hover above her enemies, suspending enemies caught in the wake below, damaging them over time. Paired with the destructive effects of Balefire, she becomes an airborne menace. In the sky or on the ground, Hildryn fills her victims full of dread. Invisible in the air and swift on the ground, she moves like the wind. This is Wisp, summoner of the ethereal. Reservoirs call forth pods from another dimension at Wisp's location, containing motes that can be plucked to provide aid to her and her allies. Vitality Mote increases maximum health and restores health. Haste Mote benefits movement and attack speed. shock mote charges and releases a paralyzing bolt of electricity, stunning those it touches. Will-O-Wisp casts forth a spectral copy of Wisp, which draws the attention and fire of her enemies for a limited time. Activating this ability again before time runs out will teleport Wisp to its location. Breach Surge opens a dimensional breach around Wisp, overwhelming enemies that cross it for a short time. When an enemy takes damage, deadly foe-seeking surge sparks may launch outwards, dealing damage proportional to the damage received. Do you worship the sun, Tenno? Soulgate opens a portal to the Daystar, creating a devastating beam of solar plasma that causes massive heat and radiation damage to her enemies. Her grace is balanced only by her destruction. Do not get lost in its wake, charging his abilities with every step. He's streamlined for speed. This is Goss, the runner, the rapid. Mach Rush thrusts Goss forward in a short sprint burst or sustained rush, charging his battery and knocking out enemies as he passes. Crashing into solid objects releases a shockwave of kinetic energy. Kinetic plating absorbs physical, heat, cold, and blast damage, preventing both knockdown and stagger effects. While it depletes Goss's battery, it returns energy based on the damage absorbed. Thermal Sunder siphons kinetic energy from the area, charging the battery while emitting a radial cold status. Reversing this process drains the battery and inflicts heat status on those caught in its wake. Overlap these elements to dispense a deadly blast radius. Take it to the limit, Tenno. Redline increases Goss's fire and reload rate, melee and holster speeds based on battery level. Supercharging his battery above the red line will release damaging bolts of arcing electricity. Upon deactivation, excess energy gets released in an explosive kinetic burst. If the battle seems out of control, Tenno, you're not going fast enough. On enemies like his own personal buffet, his hunger for battle is primal. This is Grendel, the Devourer, the Insatiable. Feast swallows an enemy whole and stores it in Grendel's gut. The more enemies held, the more energy consumed. Had enough? Evacuate the contents contained within with deadly effect. Nourish consumes the first stored enemy, providing a radial buff to Grendel and nearby allies. Regurgitate violently expels a bile-soaked enemy from Grendel's gut, turning the unfortunate creature into a toxic projectile. Revenge is like a rolling stone, Tenno. Pulverize curls Grendel into a rolling ball, violently knocking back enemies in his path. Jumping and impacting the ground, clears the immediate area with a damaging burst. Dinner is best served with a side of mayhem. Armed for deadly encounters, she is tactical and timely. This is Protea, the protector, the enforcer. Grenade Fan offers offensive and defensive capability. Activate to throw a shrapnel vortex, damaging and staggering nearby enemies. Hold to emit shield satellites that protect her, her allies, and companions, restoring a large amount of shields while increasing their regeneration rate. Blaze Artillery places a temporary rapid-fire turret that blasts plasma charges at any enemy it faces. Each successful hit increases its overall damage, piercing through to hit multiple foes with a single blast. Dispensary deploys a cycling supply cache that can generate health, ammo, and energy pickups every few seconds. Always have an escape plan, Tenno. Temporal Anchor records Protea's state upon activation. Any damage dealt is recorded and a percentage is emitted outward in a temporal implosion upon deactivation, rewinding Protea back to the activation point, restoring all ammo, energy, shields, and health to the anchored state. If downed while active, Protea will uncontrollably rewind, and any stored damage benefits will not be realized. Protea is the method to the madness. When you face her, it's already too late. Forged from the remnants of lost Warframes, they channel the spirits of the void. This is Zaku, the fragmented, the restored. Zeta's whisper imbues their weapons with void energy, dealing a percentage of additional damage for a limited time. Grasp of Lock disarms nearby enemies and surrounds Zaku with their armaments, turning their weapons against them while firing deadly void beams. The Lost channels void energy into 3 sub-abilities. Accuse corrupts a number of nearby enemies, causing them to briefly fight alongside Zaku. Gaze temporarily tethers its target in place, while any enemies who come close will have their defenses reduced. Deny fires a void beam that immediately puts enemies struck into stasis, dealing damage while resetting sentient damage resistance. We are always in repair, Tenno. The vast Untime violently erupts the armor plating off of Zaku in a burst of void energy, exposing their skeleton and allowing for faster movement while making them harder to hit. All enemies caught within its blast will be slowed and weakened by void damage. In the concert of mayhem, Zaku is a law unto themselves, manipulating the laws of the physical realm. His prowess permeates the battlefield. This is Lavos, the Transmuter, the elemental craftsman. Ophidian Bite lashes forth a serpentine strike, dealing toxin and infused damage, also healing Lavos for a percentage of damage dealt. Hold this ability to imbue toxin damage onto the next ability cast. Vial Rush charges Lavos forward, launching a trail of elemental vials in his wake. These vials contain both cold and infused damage, providing guaranteed status chance. Hold this ability to imbue cold damage onto the next ability cast. Transmutation Probe deploys a forward-moving drone that enhances pickups it passes by. Enemies who venture within its proximity take electrical and infused damage, while also reducing ability cooldowns with each successful hit. Hold this ability to imbue electrical damage onto the next ability cast. Safety first, Tenno. Catalyze deploys a perimeter of catalyst probes that inflict heat and infuse damage to enemies as they come in contact with their deadly gel, doubling in damage for each element afflicting an enemy. Hold this ability to imbue heat damage onto the next ability cast. Lavos harnesses the secret of invention, Tenno. Experimentation is the beauty of science. He is the reason to fear the darkness, where his ethereal presence shakes loose the mortal coil. This is Sevagoth, the Reaper, the Spectre of Death. Reap releases Sevagoth's shadow to damn all those it touches, damaging enemies with Death's harvest over time. The souls of the dead contribute to Sevagoth's death well. So, plants a death seed in nearby targets, siphoning their essence into Sevagoth's death well upon their expiration. Reap what's been sown to expulse a percentage of their remaining health into a deadly radial blast. Gloom casts a dreadful wave that permeates outward, slowing enemies within range, filling the death well with their life force the more he ensnares. And allies within its aura steal health with each attack. Together in eternity, draw upon the death well and tear the enemy asunder with Sevagoth's shadow. Embrace debilitates its target, pulling them within range of Shadow's deadly melee attacks for a short time. Consume dashes the Shadow forward, vacating its target's soul from their body, healing itself for a percentage of damage dealt. Death's Harvest weakens enemies around Shadow, causing them to take increased damage while the aura is active. Reunite Sevagoth and his Shadow to once again become whole. Do not seek death, Tenno, for Sebagoth may find you. She is the one to give hope to the hopeless, defeating her enemies with an aquatic grace. This is Yoreli, the selfless, the wave rider. Sea Snares sets a deceptively friendly trap for unsuspecting enemies, holding them in place while dealing increasing damage over time. If enemies are already within range when Yoreli sets her snare, the bubbles will hone in on her prey. Catch a wave with Marulina, Yoreli's very own elemental board, and the inspiration for K-driving. While riding, a percentage of incoming damage will be diverted away from Yoreli toward Marulina. Aqua Blades emits high-speed protective cyclones around Yoreli. Enemies that foolishly attempt to break through this barrier become staggered and take damage. It's the current that'll get you, Tenno. Riptide conjures a captivating jet of water that draws in her enemies, ragdolling and holding them in place. Upon deactivation, enemies are launched outward, taking increasingly lethal damage based on the amount of enemies caught within. Yoreli fights for those who need it most, and strikes fear into those who oppress. Do you dream of water, Tenno?
Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.